Good evening to all of my students for PPC 743. Here's week 2. I just wanted to give you an overview of how we're going to launch our one-on-one conversations and what some of our first expectations and targets are for this semester as we prepare our literature review, which is the primary focus of this semester. So I would just want to say, at no point should you feel overwhelmed. We're going to piece this out into chunks. You and I are going to start having these conversations every week, and we're going to have a lot of progress. We're going to be productive, and I'm working with you. My whole job is to make you successful. So without further ado, let's jump into the slides for tonight, and I look forward to talking to each and every one of you individually next week. All right, let's jump into week 2. Again, I'm Dr. Daniel Ching. I'm here as a resource for you. There is the number that you can reach me on, or another number is 476-7683, which many of you have already talked to me or have already sent me messages on that phone number. We don't use Moodle for this course, only phone calls and Google Documents and emails. Phone calls will start next week. It'll be 15 minutes, and we're going to focus on your research question and your 3 umbrellas, which many of you already sent those to me, or all of you have, and we're going to jump into those topics next week. So you got to start in your last research class, but some of you have already kind of decided you didn't want to necessarily use the same topic as you did in the class, but we're going to identify and narrow it down here regardless. And the way we're going to do it is identifying a problem. You got to figure out what is something that you want to find out about, and something that can help you make a contribution to the field. How will you add to the profession? You got to have a connection to the problem, so you got to be passionate about it. You're going to be studying this for a long time, and it's got to be something that's tangible and something that you're going to experience in the setting where you're going to do your internship. So just make sure those things are all connected. So creating a question, it's got to be specific, timely, researchable, and a need. You don't already have the answer. It's not a yes or no question. It's phrased in a way that can be studied by you. So it's something that you can actually find an answer to in doing your action research. When you're developing your lit review, you're going to skim. Don't read everything front to back all the time. You're going to look what you're looking for according to your targets. You're going to use mostly primary sources, or it's going to be dissertations, thesis, things like that are more academic. Always check chapter 2 and the appendices for your research. Those are the keys. Your question will guide you in terms of where is the gap, what needs to be found out, how is it going to be original research. Okay, that's going to help you identify what you need to find out, what you're looking for. You're going to identify a problem through your research. You're going to say, this is an area that I'd like to explore. And it's got to be something that's original. So you're going to start with a broad topic. So many of you threw out things like first generation immigrant students, SEL, things like that. And you're going to narrow that down into your 3 topics. Then you're going to contextualize that into your location of where you're working. And congrats, you found a gap. Usually that last part, you find that gap by identifying, well, this has never been studied in this specific location. What it's going to look like is a matrix such as this. And you see how this matrix is laid out. The matrix includes what type of source it is, what the actual APA citation is, and then you're going to put in quotes into your matrix. So I use Google Sheets for this. It gives you an opportunity to put those quotes in cells, and you can refer back to it as you write your literature review. So I'm going to send this model to you guys, and you're going to base your research, and you're going to put it all in this matrix. Believe me, this helps because it categorizes and organizes it. So you'll see that your topic area, the 3 umbrellas, you'll identify where that's coming from, which topic it's covering, and you'll guarantee that you have an equitable and equal amount of research in each of those areas. The 3 umbrellas, we're looking for 8 sources minimum, 4 to 5 quotes per source. And we want to have this done by June 20th. So Once we identify your questions and your topics, this is our goal, is to complete that matrix. This ensures that it flows well, there's no creative writing, it's a thorough investigation, and an assurance for you and me that you do have a well-researched paper. This is much preferable to you just pulling sources and trying to write as you go. It makes you more scientific, more strategic. You get these from the school library, past library access from other universities, or online. You should have plenty of ways to find sources, and if you can't, you can either call the library or I can help you. So, your homework for this week is to, again, you're going to email me your first version of your research question. All right? You're going to identify your primary 3 umbrellas, which you've already done, but you're going to include that in this. And you're going to put a template together for a matrix. So it's going to be blank, but it's going to be Google Sheets, and it's going to be shared with me. So when trying it, things like, okay, your broad topic might be social emotional learning. And then underneath that, you might be the role of the high school counselor in providing social emotional learning opportunities for students. And below that, you might include a topic of best practices for implementing social emotional learning in a high school. All right, so those would be 3 different areas, and you would narrow that down to whatever location you're working in, such as Los Banos High School, right? And you would make it unique research based on that. Here's one last look at that matrix. Again, I'm going to send you that screenshot, but you could see how it's laid out by topic area, by type of source. You have the APA citation in there, and you have the quotes. So when you're using this as you type along, you can actually color code it. So the way I color coded it when I use the same system for my dissertation is I highlight the quotes that I've used in green. Any quotes that I decided ultimately not to use because it didn't quite fit or I didn't need another one, I would highlight red. But that would show me an indication of which sources I've used and which I haven't, and which topic area is covered completely and which of them need some more research. So you do this beforehand, and then your writing becomes very easy and very strategic. You're not just trying to pull it all together. So it's kind of like when you're writing, you should not hear your voice very much at all. So you post a citation, and then you have a clarifying sentence that follows. Post another citation, have another clarifying sentence that follows. And you don't quote the same source over and over. You have an equal distribution. So that's the idea of the matrix. It makes writing literature, a literature review, much more smooth. So let's talk a little bit about the research question, how you develop it. Okay. So let's use social emotional learning. I know I keep using that as an example, but let's just use that for the sake of just clarity and consistency. So let's say that you're researching social emotional learning and you want to know about program implementation. So let's just say there was like a really concentration of a real concentrated effort on the school's behalf. Let's just use Los Banos High School as an example again, in implementing a real social emotional learning program. So your first umbrella would be social emotional learning. Your second one would be, what is the high school counselor's role? Because this is the field that you're going into. So what is the high school counselor's role? There's going to be a lot of literature out there about what a high school counselor does to implement social emotional learning. And then you could do your third umbrella as best practices, lessons learned from SEL implementation in a school that didn't previously have it or necessarily have a strong program. Those are 3 full areas that there should be plenty of research about. But you narrow it down, you use that funnel system, and you come down to a point. Your last point would be contextualizing that within Los Banos. You would give demographics, kind of the school context, things like that. And that would make it unique research because more than likely, there hasn't been a thesis or dissertation written specifically about Los Banos High School's implementation of SEL. Okay, but wait, I haven't developed a question yet. So we're kind of backwards mapping it here. But if in fact you want to know about implementation of a SEL program at that high school, you would essentially say, okay, how am I going to ask a question and be able to discover it? So remember, we talked about We're all going to do an interview or a survey, most likely just the way it rolls. A lot of people do interviews. So you got to think to yourself, how can I, through an interview process, answer a question about something where I think there's a gap or I need to have more knowledge about? Typically, if you're researching as a counselor or prospective counselor, which you're going to be, you would look at the lived experience of those that implemented that system. So your research question could be, full circle here is, what is the lived experience of school leaders in Los Banos High School in developing and implementing a social emotional learning program? So you see how I took an interest area and an area that I thought you could learn from, and then I made it. I identified a gap because I discovered that, okay, this hasn't been really looked into in this particular school, or at least in this context. And then I said, okay, how can I discover that with the tools and the timeline that I have? And I framed it into a question about getting feedback from the leaders that actually implemented this program and talking about their lived experience. So that would be a rough draft of a research question that would fit the need in this. So again, you would research those three umbrellas. So when you're doing your matrix, first you would find, which there's going to be a ton of these, but you would find social emotional learning. One could argue that that's actually too broad of a topic, but I'm just using it as an example. It could be something that you use. A lot of times people narrow that like down to more specific things underneath SEL. But for the sake of consistency, your first umbrella would be social emotional learning. Your second umbrella that you would research, this would be the topic area that you would put, the second topic area you would put in your matrix, would be the counselor's role in implementing SEL. So this is where you have to do a little bit more digging, because it's not going to be as easy, but it will be pretty easy, because trust me, there's been a lot of dissertations and research done on high school counselors or counselors in general in implementing SEL. Your third one would really be about more of the program. What are best practices of schools that are exemplars, or schools that have gone through a learning process of implementing it? And that would be your third umbrella. And last, it would just be a paragraph or two about putting Los Banos into context. At that point, you'll have, between 10 to 14 pages of lit review just based on those three umbrellas. And it'll all circle back to probably the very most important thing of this semester is identifying a research question. Now, we'll do a raw one and we'll start our research, and most likely I will refine that over time as we talk more. But that is your goal. So this week, again, you're going to do a research question. You're going to try it before we talk. You're going to do the three umbrellas, which you've already sent to me, but you're going to add those in. And you are going to start a template in Google Sheets for your matrix that looks just like the one that I sent you guys. And you're going to email all those things to me, and you're going to sign up for a time for us to talk. All right, everybody. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you got a lot out of it. Don't fret. Don't stress out. We're going to talk every week, and I'm here to help you. All right, everybody. Have a great night.